Hi there, well as we go forwards into the first week of May we look back on what's been quite a dry April for many parts of the UK. This graph here showing the rainfall anomaly across the whole of the UK for the month of April as compared to the 1981 to 2010 average, and you can really see how dry it has been for many places, particularly parts of eastern Scotland, southern Scotland and northern England. Many places down to around 25% of their regular April rainfall, so exceptionally dry for some of these areas. Further south, not not quite as below average, still many places below average, but you can see some parts of southern England and eastern England getting close to their average, particularly across parts of Wiltshire and Hampshire. You can actually see some slight hints of blue colour there where the rainfall was about 125% of its average. So actually for some parts of southern England it was slightly above average, but for the vast majority of the UK rainfall amounts are generally below average as compared to normal for the month of April. Now, splitting the month of April up into two, you can really see the difference that the first half was compared to the second half. So this here's the radar estimated rainfall for the 1st to the 15th of April, so roughly the first half of the month. You can see western and northern Scotland really saw the most of the rainfall there, with some stations recording 70 or 80 millimetres of rain during that 2-week period. Now further south and to the east across eastern Scotland, and then further south across Britain, many places seeing less than 5 millimetres of rain across that 2-week period. Look at Kent, you can see some places only getting on close to half a millimetre of rainfall, so exceptionally dry for that first 2-week period across parts of Kent and Surrey and areas like that. There's a little bit more mixed across the Midlands and East Anglia, many places still seeing less than 5 millimetres of rain during that period, but there were a few days when we saw some quite heavy showers and thunderstorms develop, and that gave a few sort of quite isolated, localised totals of something like 10-15 millimetres for some places. So it was quite mixed across those areas, with just a few spots seeing something quite significant rainfall wise, but many areas still staying relatively dry. Now compare that to the second half of April, the 16th to the 30th. Looking at Scotland, much less rainfall than the first part of the month, where we saw that quite wet area across western Scotland. So a little bit drier across the northern half of Britain, but much more rainfall further south. You can see some reds and oranges across southern England, and actually parts of the Wiltshire, Hampshire area I mentioned earlier. Some stations recorded 70 to 80 millimetres of rain across that 2-week period. So a much wetter second half of the month for southern Britain than the first half of the month, with many places seeing rainfall order of that sort of thing. Now moving further north across the Midlands, we saw around 25 to 30 millimetres of rain, around an inch for some places, and then as you went further northward that rainfall generally got less. So the rainfall definitely concentrated across the southern half of the British Isles during the second week of April. Now taking a look at the forecast ahead for the next few days, through Tuesday we saw quite a breezy day across much of southern England, with that southeasterly wind there. You can see slightly tighter isobars by early Wednesday morning, mainly just across southwestern Britain by that point. And as we go through Wednesday, that high pressure is going to move down the North Sea and actually bring quite a settled, calm day across much of eastern Britain, with plenty of sunshine, staying dry, and relatively light winds for the eastern half of the British Isles. Now that low pressure out to the west, bringing a southerly flow across Ireland, so potentially seeing quite a few showers, some heavy showers as well across parts of Ireland, perhaps parts of just western Cornwall and the western part of Wales could see a few showers as well, but generally it's further west where most of the showery activity will be, and further east it's staying relatively dry, fairly sunny as well. Now going into Thursday and through Friday, that high pressure will move away slowly across the continent, becoming quite dominant across the continent, and we will see a few showers begin to creep in to parts of central England as well. So much of the showery activity still across Ireland and Scotland, where there will be quite a few showers, but by Friday afternoon we could just see a few odd showers across the Midlands and East Anglia, perhaps into southern England, but I think most places generally will stay dry for that 3-day period across the southern half of the British Isles. So becoming a touch more unsettled into Friday, with those showers creeping slowly southwards. But it's not really until the weekend where I think that southern England could begin to see a bit of rain as well. So this area of low pressure out to the south on Saturday morning, currently across the Bay of Biscay and moving into northern France, could bring an area of rain into southern England and parts of southern Wales and Ireland. Now there is a bit of uncertainty as to how far northwards that rain will push, but it looks like there's a reasonable chance on the south coast of fairly confidently getting a bit of rain, further north becoming a bit less certain for that, but definitely seeing something attempt to push into the southern half of Britain. Now you will see further north that those pressure isobars beginning to tighten, so turning quite breezy from the north and moving southwards. And if you follow those isobars back up, you can see that they lead up into the Arctic. So we are going to see some quite cool air coming into northern Scotland during Saturday and then spreading further south during Sunday and Monday. So it will turn quite chilly into the first part of next week, while temperatures through this week and into Saturday relatively warm. Saturday could see highs of 22 or 23 degrees, those sorts of temperatures across southern England. But by Sunday into the week and into the early part of next week, turning significantly cooler, and it will feel quite noticeably cooler as well in the breeze, especially on the coast. So want to prepare for the sunny weather and warm weather generally through this week before turning colder into next week. Now, with that area of high pressure moving down the eastern side of the British Isles, it looks like there's going to be a relatively reasonably good amount of spraying opportunities. So these green colours in here indicating the ideal spraying opportunities, winds less than 10 miles per hour and staying dry. And you can see plenty of green across Scotland, England and Wales over the next few days. Little less over Ireland with just a bit more of a southerly breeze. But plenty elsewhere until the weekend, until Saturday, once those winds start to strengthen across mainly northern Britain. But generally, I think by the end of Saturday, most places will be quite breezy. So if you've got any spraying to do, it's definitely best for the next few days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Look like the ideal days to go and get some spraying. By the weekend it does become quite breezy for many places. So now looking at the temperature for the next few days, this is the 850 millibar temperature, which is generally a good representative of what sort of air is sitting over us at the minute. So you can see over the next few days and into the weekend, generally it actually does continue to pick up. Like I say, we could see highs of 22 or 23 degrees Celsius across parts of southern England by the early part of the weekend and Friday. So turning quite warm, generally in the sunshine as well, but you can see that drop off from Sunday into Monday as that colder air comes in from the north. So it will feel noticeably colder by Monday. Highs on Monday potentially of 8 or 9 degrees across East Anglia, the Midlands, southern England. So significantly colder into the early part of next week, and it will feel noticeably colder, like I say, in the wind as well. So a big change through into the early part of next week. And although we are into the latter part of spring, we're still at the time of year where there is the slight risk of seeing a few frosty nights. So these graphs here showing the overnight temperatures on Monday night into Tuesday morning. So you can see a few of these models going for touching zero, slightly below zero, and I think by no means this is looking like a widespread air frost or anything like that, but it just highlights that there is the risk of a few locations seeing a bit of patchy frost by Tuesday morning. But with the wind, it is going to be quite marginal. The windier locations likely to not see as much frost, but a few sheltered spots could just see a touch of frost. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on in the forecast between now and then, as things are liable to change, almost like say close to a week away. But one to bear in mind that there could be a touch of frost around. I know this is the time of year where bud burst in vineyards is still a particularly vulnerable thing. I know for for those sorts of things. So it's definitely one to watch, I think, over the early part of next week, just to keep an eye on the risk of frost. But like I said, I don't think it's going to be anything widespread. Just a few more sheltered locations could see something a touch cooler during Monday night. So after Monday, looking at the temperatures still, it does look like things continue to actually then pick up again through the week and into the week after. So a slow rise in the temperatures through next week and the week after, but it doesn't really get back up to anything like the week we've just seen. So definitely the warmer weather for the next 10-15 days or so is definitely this week and into the early part of the weekend. Beyond that, turning cooler with a slow hint of something rising through next week and the week after. Now, in terms of sunshine, obviously over the next few days with that high pressure, there's going to be plenty of sunny spells around. Most of the models going for a reasonable amount of solar radiation up into the top bracket there of the solar radiation. But Monday and through early next week, going to be a reasonably higher amount of cloud around. So this is for Cambridge, that bit further east. So nearer to the coast, we're going to see quite a lot of cloud coming in off the North Sea. So reduced solar radiation levels from Monday onwards, and it will turn fairly cloudy for many places, especially nearer the coast. So the best of the sunshine the end of this week and into the weekend, and then turning cloudier through next week and beyond. Now you can get a lot of information like that and for many other variables, including temperature, overnight temperature, wind speeds, on our Weatherquest farming portal. Now we're still offering a 2-week trial for the farming portal. You can also see an extended version of the monthly forecast as well as a detailed 10-day forecast for your location as well. So if you want a free trial of that, just email your details to info@weatherquest.co.uk or give us a call, and we'll be able to set that up for you, and you can have an explore around the website and see if it's anything there that's looking good for helping you guys out. So looking ahead for the next 4 weeks or so, this is next week, Monday through until Sunday. That area of high pressure beginning to move slowly further eastwards across the UK, lower pressure over Iberia, and then lower than average pressure further northeast across Europe as well. So in terms of the temperatures, with that high pressure over the UK and lower pressure over Scandinavia, with that northerly flow coming down into northern parts of Europe, we are going to see quite chilly temperatures through particularly the early part of next week. Some parts of Germany, Poland, Scandinavia could see temperatures on average around 6 or 7 degrees below average through the early part of next week, before slowly rising through towards the end of the week. So a chillier picture across much of Europe for temperatures, still looking warmer than average across Italy and parts of southeastern Europe, but generally most places on the chillier side. Now with that high pressure to close by the UK as well, northwestern Europe generally seeing a drier than average picture for next week, especially further inland. Now it is worth noting that around North Sea coasts, the eastern half of Britain, parts of northern France, northern Germany, could see slightly closer to average rainfall, with quite a few showers coming in off the North Sea. So one to bear in mind that it is going to be dry the further inland you are away from the North Sea coasts, with quite a few showers likely around those areas. Now wetter than average with that area of low pressure across much of Iberia and parts of Italy and Central Europe as well, but then further southeast again with the warmer temperatures, with that high pressure there, it does also look to be on the drier side for the Balkans and Italy. Now moving into the third week of May, from the 18th through to the 24th, we'll actually see a slightly higher than average pressure picture across much of Europe. You can see those slight pinks really dominating across most of Europe. Low pressure beginning to try and push in from the west. You can see it pushing into the western half of the British Isles, some of those blue colours. So lower than average pressure beginning to look more likely further west. But elsewhere across Europe, drier than average conditions, lower than average rainfall for many places. It is quite patchy and only slightly below average in many places, but it does look like Europe generally could see a slightly drier week for the majority of places through that third week of May. Now if you look closer, you can see Ireland and parts of western Britain actually in the greens, as that low pressure tries to push in some fronts, some areas of rain to the western half of Britain. So potentially wetter than average further west for the British Isles, but eastern side of Britain still seeing the close to or slightly drier than average rainfall. Temperature-wise, temperatures recovering from the previous week across the western half of Europe. You can see slightly above average temperatures further west, but staying cold across Scandinavia and the eastern part of Europe as well. Now into the last week, quite a weak pressure signal, but generally what you can see is a slight hint of something higher than average pressure across northern Scandinavia, as well as slightly across southern Europe as well. You can't actually see it in this image, but the upper pattern shows a slightly higher than average pressure hint across the southern half of Europe. So this generally going for warmer than average temperatures slightly across southern and some central parts of Europe, with generally high pressure dominating and a bit more of a southerly flow, but still colder than average across Scandinavia and Eastern Europe and Western Russia. So staying cold for much of the period actually for those places, but we do see temperatures back to slightly above average by the end of the period further south. Now in terms of rainfall, with the pressure building further south, it does look like around the Mediterranean, southern Europe could see slightly below average rainfall, similarly across northern Scandinavia as well, with the hints of that high pressure there. But around the North Sea coasts and some central areas there of Europe, we could see something slightly wetter than average, some areas of rain pushing across the North Sea, the Baltic Sea. So one to watch, that there could actually be some wetter conditions for those areas during the last week of May. So to summarise, for the UK, for the rest of this week, warm and largely dry across the eastern half of the British Isles for the rest of this week. A few showers beginning to push into the west and slowly moving further southwards by the weekend. By the weekend and into the early part of next week, becoming windier with rain possible in the south. So we could see that spell of rain on Sunday, like I say, still a relatively large amount of uncertainty for that. But looking fairly confident that it will turn colder during the early part of next week and through next week, as we see the northerly flow push across the UK. And then across Europe towards the end of the May, it looks like we see that slightly drier than average picture beginning to develop as the high pressure sort of dominates across much of Central Europe. So thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, as ever, feel free to tweet them to us or follow us on Facebook, or get in touch via email with your comments.